Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for our Village of Alsip Committee meeting. Today is October 14th, 2019. We'll call this meeting in order at 7:31. Can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Delzell?
Here.
Trustee Zielinski?
Here.
Trustee Juarez?
Here.
Trustee McLaughlin?
Here.
Trustee Murphy?
Here.
Trustee Nava Esparza?
Here.
Mayor Ryan?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustees and ladies and gentlemen in the audience, before we start our regular reports this evening, toward the end of the agenda, we had a request for a closed session. I asked our village attorney, Mike Kankar, Mike asked to be here tonight. He needs to brief the board on a particular issue, so I'm going to ask that we go out of order, take a short recess to go into executive session, or closed session, I should say, and then we'll continue the meeting after. There should be a brief meeting, and this would be the second part of what we're looking for here on our closed session. This is to go into closed session to discuss litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed session meeting pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, Chapter 11. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call number 1 to recess to closed session, again, to discuss litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C11. Again, this is roll call number 1 to recess to closed session. Trustee Delzell?
Yes.
Trustee Zielinski?
Yes.
Trustee Juarez?
Yes.
Trustee McLaughlin?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Nava Esparza?
Yes.
Motion carries. We will recess to closed session at 7:33 p.m.
Folks, this should be really brief, and so please bear with us, and we'll get right back in here then, too. Thank you. Okay. All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order at 7:53 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, officers' reports, starting with myself. Just two things I wanted to share with the board. I want to thank the Public Works. I did excuse both Public Works and Water tonight. They both had other things to attend to, but I want to thank I want to thank the Public Works Department. They're working really well with Rogers Village Properties. Today we started seal coating all the parking lots over at Heritage Apartments. That was a major undertaking to move all those cars and stuff. We've got 512 apartments that the village owns, 255 and older communities. So just to move half of those cars from each complex took a lot. And Deputy Chief, I appreciate the patience. Everybody, any complaints today and stuff yet too? Or? Good. Unfortunately, I didn't get any at my place, in my office, I should say, either. But they're doing a nice job. They started on half the lots today. Obviously, they're going to follow up and stripe them right away tomorrow. Should be dry. We had some decent weather and stuff. And then we'll go on to the second half of all that, too. But they did a great job. I was out there watching today. They were moving those big garbage cans and everything else with forklifts and so forth. And actually, who's doing the work? Roy's?
Shamrock.
Oh, Shamrock Blacktop. Yep. Great job. They got a major crew out there and stuff yet, too. So, good. The other thing I wanted to mention was I saw Chuck Geraci earlier, trustees, and Chuck's crew is doing a great job. They were present. We had a really good turnout this weekend, and thank you for all that came out. Art, thanks for helping out this weekend, and Arnie was out there and so forth. I'm sorry if I missed anybody. Norb, I saw you out there too as well. But the fire department had a really good open house this weekend. Huge turnout. Yeah, big turnout over there. And the CERT team came out and helped out and volunteered. And then our CERT team, it's CERT, is the Community Emergency Response Team, assisted yesterday at the Chicago Marathon. These guys were out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. They did a 14-hour day out there yesterday. I guess they manned the medical tent at Lakeshore Drive in Jackson. Chuck was just telling me, and there were people collapsing, you name it, and stuff. And it was a good thing you had Chuck Tracy out there and stuff, too, to help assist some of these people. And Chuck's very good. He's a very talented guy. And obviously his crew got a first-hand experience of how to really help some people that were, he said people were actually going into shock, by the time they reached that. I'm not sure how far he was from the finish line, but he says the people were shutting down by the time they got to him at Lake Shore and Jackson and stuff. So thank you again, Chuck, and certainly your CERT team. We appreciate the volunteers that come out to help and represent our community. That's all I have for this evening. Clerk's report?
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. I'm going to flip-flop my order, if the trustees will indulge me. First, presentation of the September motor fuel tax allotment in the amount of $69,629.73. The first/second is the presentation of the September 2019 FOIA report. Just want to mention to all the department heads as well as the trustees who have recently been looped into FOIA compliance submittal of documentation that it is important that the responses are turned in a timely manner, because I have to put a bunch of things together and then send it out, and there are timelines. So the trustees will be receiving a second request for documentation here later on this evening from another new FOIA that came in earlier today. So if you've got any questions, please reach out to myself or the village attorney, who is noted on the cover memo, if you have questions on what to submit. That is all, Mayor Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks. We've reached a public forum part of our meeting. Anybody in the audience wish to address the board tonight? Nobody? Thank you. Then we'll move on with the standing committee reports. Finance Committee, Trustee McLaurin.
Next week, I will have the usual list of payroll and accounts payable for approval, and that's all I have there.
All right, thank you. Trustee Murphy, the fire report?
No report this evening, sir.
Okay. Trustee, we did, and trustees, just so you know, I think I looped, if I didn't, I meant to loop everybody in last week, but we do have our backup ambulance. We've got 3 ambulances in town. The backup is out getting the transmission repaired right now and stuff then too. We're really taking a beating this year on maintenance on our fire equipment. And unfortunately, early last week, a car pulled out in front of our, I'm not sure which ambulance, it was a brand new one or not, but it's been repaired already too. But we had a little fender bender with a motorist that got in front of an ambulance last week too. So we're getting our share of bumps and dents. So.
Pull to the right for sirens and lights?
Yes. Somehow that person, too, the chief said, had the exact opposite explanation for that, too, which didn't make any sense. Next, the police and traffic safety report. Trustee Dalzell.
Make the presentation of the police department report for September 2019. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Public work and boat launch report. Trustee Juarez.
I have a request for approval to purchase 36 new parkway trees through the Suburban Tree Consortium, and the amount not to exceed $12,342 for the 2019 fall planting season. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustees, I apologize. I meant to say, too, the fire chief was excused this evening. He's at that annual training session in Peoria that they attend. Next is the sewer and water report. Trustee Nava-Esparza.
No report tonight.
All right. Building and Health Committee, Trustee Zelinski.
I have a presentation of the Building Department's September 2019 monthly activity report, and also for item number 2 here, discussion on the rodent concerns at Food for Less. I'd like to bring the Building Inspector Roger Early up.
On Thursday morning, we were, myself and Linda Cavella, Health Inspector, did go to Food for Less. We did follow up with the manager. He is, on that day, he was 4 days old. He was thrown into it. We did not, after the inspection, we did not find any holes on the interior or exterior for rodents to get in or out of. Their garbage cans were contained properly. We did go back again and do another inspection today, and I will read to you what we found. Complaint states rodents observed in a deli counter area, video of what addressed to be a wild rodent made available on YouTube website. Upon full and complete inspection of the facilities, the following on page 3 revealed certain violations observed during the review, which were ordered completed within 7 days. Reinspection ordered on October 21st. Note, there were no observation of any indication of rodent activity anywhere outside the building structure or on property grounds. There were no open entry points observed. Additionally, there were no observations of any indication of any infestation or activity in the building anywhere. A full and thorough inspection was performed at this time. We believe that it may be a malice part. There was a management change. Some of the employees were let go on, I believe, Friday or Saturday. So with the new change, kind of the possibility of somebody purposely doing that.
Thanks much, Raj. I briefed the board on everything that I had seen over the weekend and so forth. I visited the site as well on Friday morning and had a good interview with the store manager and the HR person from the store. And the store manager came in to meet with our health officer here, and all of our health compliance reports have been filed. And we did check their pest control log, and I saw it. To me, it looked up to speed, but I asked you guys to double check it. And the pest control was up to date.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
They were out the day that it happened. They were out the day that it happened and the following day, and they have been out subsequently every day after that, doing and monitoring every day.
Okay. Trustees, any questions for Roger?
Did they ever find it?
Roger, what was the remediation on that? Yeah.
I believe that it was found and put down.
Okay.
It's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. That's all I have this evening, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Next, we had the Human Resource and Insurance Report. Trustee Murphy.
No report tonight, sir.
All right. Special Committee Reports. Economic Development. Trustee Nava Esparza.
No report tonight, Mayor.
All right. Next, we have the Village Property Report. Trustee McLaughlin.
We have a request for approval to have a concrete pad with electricity installed at the Veterans Plaza to be utilized as a base for the Christmas tree and any other displays we might want to put up.
Roger, can I ask you to go back up to the mic for a minute, please? You were out of town for when I had to put this on the agenda. You mentioned it to me, but I didn't have anything to put in the packet. Can you explain to the trustees what you're looking at?
What we're looking at doing is pouring a 26-inch round pad to support the Christmas tree and also bring over the electric to it. Possible cost not to exceed $5,500 for the concrete and the electric. I'm going on the high side, but I don't want to say it because if it comes in somewhere, I'd rather go higher than not.
What's the dimension on that pad you want to do?
26-foot round.
26. How big is, well, now we have an almost 40-foot tree that was donated to us. And certainly maybe down the road we do something smaller, but it's a metal frame that Public Works can decorate and so forth. But what's the radius on that tree?
It's basically 24-foot round, so give it the
So we got a foot or so around.
26-foot round
And
by 5 inches deep.
And obviously, should we have the need, trustees, for any kind of public display, like if we use, I mean, it's the whole idea of having a green space to begin with, but rather than being in the grass, if we do have any kind of displays, or if we have, any type of formal event, obviously it's utilized the same way. It's just that when we got this big tree, what do we have right down there right now?
What we ended up doing was using asphalt grindings and then wood.
That's what I thought. I didn't know what that was. Okay. That we set that tree on. But obviously with a base there, it can be reused every season regardless of what we put out there. And I believe, and Kent will be back tomorrow. He's on vacation for a couple of days. But I believe that can be a TIF expense, yes, out of the TIF district. So, any questions for Roger on that, trustees?
No.
All right, thanks, Roger.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Next, ordinance and legislation, trustee Zelinski.
I have a discussion regarding the approval of allowing recreational cannabis to be sold within the village of Alsip, Illinois, commencing January 2020.
Trustees, I just want to keep this discussion moving because obviously the state of Illinois has deemed January 2020, January 1st, is when this Cannabis Regulation Tax Act will go into effect. In your packets, Police Chief Jay Miller submitted some analysis and some discussion or presentations that he's attended. Deputy Chief Sean Schultz with us tonight, and Deputy Chief Schultz is, Sean, you've been in these same presentations, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Jay did have, I mean, we can certainly, if anyone has anything they want to pick from Jay's report that he submitted, certainly we can go back and, why don't we revisit this? We'll take a couple of minutes real quick and look through what Jay gave us. I apologize. I'm going to stay with Chief Miller. I don't want to get anybody distracted. But his summary was that this document summarizes the potential impact of the Cannabis Regulation Act effective January 1, 2020. The impact is divided into two sections. The first outlines concerns and potential negative impacts of the authorization of licensed establishments outlined in the legislation. The second highlighted concerns to public safety resulting from public use of cannabis, including anticipated impact on law enforcement and resources. And Jay had he had his concerns in here where he actually had the advent of recreational cannabis and the perspective for increased adult consumption of cannabis has raised several concerns related to public safety. Chief Miller cites the Colorado Hospital Association and the Colorado Department of Public Health, where it has been legalized in Colorado, that hospitalizations have almost doubled since 2012. They had almost 6,700 people to more than 11,000 people in 2 years later in 2014. That was the latest data that was available that he was able to pull from. Obviously, it's related to high potency in some of these things, too. Chief Schultz, can I ask you, do you want to go through this rather than me picking this apart? Did you want to make a comment on this?
I don't actually have that report in front of me.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, Chief.
But some of it is correct. The problem is people consuming and not knowing the potency. Therefore, we're overdosing and having to be hospitalized due to the fact that they were consuming much higher than what is recommended.
Okay. Trustees, what I submitted to everyone earlier, too, is just some highlights for discussion, what everybody's looking at. And I won't bore everyone by reading aloud, but what I did was I wanted to use a few examples that I've seen online. Certainly our legal team can extract and our legal team can actually put ordinances together based on what our concerns are. What I put on here was regarding recreational cannabis. Recreational cannabis becomes legal in 3 months. Law enforcement will face challenges as consumers indulge in a new legal high. Tax revenue will be sought by municipalities. In many communities, the debate is focused on economics. Municipalities can charge a sales tax up to 3% on marijuana sales. Estimates have ranged from $300,000 to $500,000 in additional local tax revenue depending on the size of the community. There's going to be a need to educate teens on health risk, though pot will only be sold to people 21 years and older. Marijuana is going to be a big business. The Tribune reports that eventually nearly 946,000 Illinois residents, in other words, more than 9% of people over 21, could become cannabis consumers, according to a study commissioned by the Illinois lawmakers. Out of roughly 114 million visitors to Illinois each year, almost 11 million are expected to buy weed. Please note, the federal government prohibited prohibition on cannabis prohibits banks from handling proceeds, so legal weed companies largely operate on cash. The U.S. House of Representatives just passed a Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. It's what they call the SAFE Act. It's SAFE, which would permit banks to work with cannabis businesses that are following state law, but it's unclear how the Senate will proceed yet, and that was actually from today's Tribune. The financial impact of legalizing marijuana in Illinois: 66% of registered voters supported legalizing, regulating, and taxing recreational marijuana, including a bipartisan majority of Democrats and Republicans. Furthermore, 10 states and the District of Columbia have already legalized recreational marijuana. This report by the Illinois Economic Policy Institute and the Project for Middle Class Renewal at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign finds that high taxpayer costs for law enforcement and cannabis-related incarceration would be reduced by legalizing recreational marijuana. In total, Illinois taxpayers supposedly would save almost $18 million annually in reduced incarceration cost. Illinois has estimated $1.6 billion would be sold in the state, in part due to regional tourism, at a 26.25% state excise tax on retail marijuana, in addition to the 6.25% tax, which is basically general sales tax. This would generate an extra $525 million in new tax revenues, including $505 million for the state and $20 million for local governments. A move that credit rating agencies have called a credit positive basically creates over 23,000 new jobs and more than 2,600 businesses in Illinois, boost the Illinois economy by $1 billion annually. It's huge, even to make that statement. Allow the state to make additional pension payments and vital public investments in infrastructure, kindergarten through 12 public schools, college tuition assistance programs, and drug treatment and prevention programs. So, trustees, what I did was I put together something that I kind of took from, just as an example, like for every community, this is going to be new to a lot of us. And I took an example. Chief Miller used a couple examples in the packet that he observed from both Lombard and an ordinance that Skokie drafted. I wanted to pull, a question that we've had with the board here, with some of the trustees have mentioned in the past, was zoning. And what I used here was an example from Lombard. Lombard trustees considered recommendations from their plan commission regarding the topic of recreational cannabis dispensaries within the village. The board agreed with the plan commission's recommendations to include the dispensaries as a permitted use in the O, I, and B4A districts. What that means is, for reference, that's the office district, industrial district, or basically on Roosevelt Road in their community. They picked out a street that they want to do these in. The Lombard Village Board approved cannabis dispensaries as conditional use in basically all of their B districts, all their business districts, which means their neighborhood and commercial district, their corridor commercial, and their downtown and downtown parameter. The Lombard Village Board's decision allows for potentially interested businesses that are licensed and regulated to open a recreational cannabis dispensary business in Lombard. Should a business choose a location in a conditional use area, they will require approval from the Plan Commission and the Village Board. So they kind of broke down where they had some workshops, that they had a workshop, and where they looked at the different districts, be it the office district, industrial corridor, or their Roosevelt Road. And what they did was they put permitted areas, and as I just mentioned, everything else in the business district was conditional upon the recommendation of their Plan Commission. Another example that Lombard had was their village board did provide direction to staff to prepare a text amendment petition to be presented to the Lombard Plan Commission. Key items in the text amendment would include amending the village code to establish a definition for cannabis dispensing facilities. Number 2 was amend the zoning ordinance to permit cannabis dispensing facilities in the following districts, and as I just mentioned, whether it's in the I&O or the business district. Number 3 was prohibit cannabis smoking and consumption in the business establishments. Number 4 was prohibit cannabis cultivation, growing, and processing and transportation facilities within the village. Please note that these recommendations are intended to establish code regulations in Lombard that would need to be followed by prospective businesses. This is not granting approval of any particular establishment or location. The Lombard Village Board also recommended that an item be placed on a future Village Board agenda to consider the adoption of the optional 3% municipal retailer's tax that the village can impose. So I'm not going to read through all the facts, but I did include a nice fact sheet. I did, as I mentioned to Deputy Chief Schultz and all the trustees when I handed these out before the meeting, just as an example, I inserted Alsip's name as opposed to Lombard, just so it didn't look so confusing. But it does have on here how the premise, basically when was cannabis made legal in Illinois, and basically that was in July 25th, 2019, after Governor Pritzker signed House Bill 1438, better known as the Cannabis Regulation Tax Act. There's also facts in here about consumption and possession of cannabis. Can consumption or possession of cannabis be banned by a local municipality like Alsip? And the answer is no. Municipalities cannot ban or override, right, Chief? Right. I mean, it's there. The state's allowing it. Will the village have any regulatory abilities? Absolutely. When it comes to restrictions, municipalities have the ability to ban the selling of recreational cannabis within village limits. The village can dictate the amount of legal dispensaries within the village. The village can also determine how cannabis businesses are operated, such as their hours of operation. The village can also dictate location of cannabis businesses as they relate to points of interest, such as schools and churches, government buildings, and/or liquor stores. And finally, the village can regulate the zoning of cannabis businesses in specific districts. What regulatory abilities do the business owners or landlords have? Any person, business, public entity, or landlord may prohibit the use of cannabis on private property. And then number 5 was, if the sale of recreational cannabis was to be allowed in Alsip, how many licenses would be issued? And again, while many individual cities have a limitation and amount of recreational cannabis facilities, otherwise known as dispensaries, they're allowed within their limits. Alsip can determine that number. So should the village permit dispensaries to open? How many? How will the village manage public safety at these locations? And certainly the Alsip Police Department makes safety the village's top priority, and any specific security concerns will be addressed. Again, there's actually, here, I get to just one more fact. How is cannabis taxed? Sales will be taxed at 10% for cannabis with THC levels of at or less than 35%. 25% tax will be applied for cannabis with a higher THC level, above 35%. And there will be a 20% sales tax for cannabis-infused products such as edibles. This is in addition to the standard state and local taxes. Additionally, municipalities may add special tax up to 3%, and counties may add a special tax up to 3 3/4% in unincorporated areas. How will the potential tax revenue generated be used? Within the bill, any government proceeds associated with the sale of recreational cannabis was established as follows. Again, 20% to the state mental health services and substance abuse programs, 10% to pay unpaid state bills, and 35% to the state general revenue fund, 2% to the public education and safety campaigns, and 8% to the local government distribution fund. That's the monies that we get from the state for prevention and training for law enforcement, and then finally 25% of the money for identified social equity programs. So I know we don't have a big audience this evening, but should anybody want a copy of what I'm talking about, I do have a couple extra sheets up here too, so I'm happy to pass those out. Sure. Thank you, sir. Board, do you have any questions, trustees, at this time?
One of the concerns I had is what is us as the village, what is our legal lines as far as can there be any kind of legal action taken against us if something happens?
Liability on
Any
us?
kind of liabilities, yes.
Chief, do you want to answer that?
It would probably be no more or less than it would be if you allow a bar to open up. It's generally viewed as, by the state now, almost the exact same regulations as they would have with alcohol. So it would be like any place that you would give a liquor license to. I don't think you would incur any more liability than what you would already have out there with other places having liquor license.
Okay.
What would the price of the permit be for something like that as well? I know
That-
we have a slew of liquor licenses out there, but
That, trustee, I haven't seen yet, and I know that's still for more discussion yet with us yet, too. So, that'll be forthcoming. And what I'd like to do, too, trustees, is, this, like I said, I started this conversation probably 2 months ago, but now we're getting closer to crunch time, and we need to, probably by next month, we're going to ask that whether or not we're going to approve this action. But what I also want to do is, I'll certainly meet with the Alsip Industrial Association and the Chamber of Commerce. I want to let them in on the conversation as well, and invite them in 2 weeks at our next committee meeting to participate in the conversation as well. Obviously, this is on us to make final decisions, but you want to get input from your local sources too. This is what impacts the industrial community as well as our chamber yet too. So I'll invite them into the conversation for comment, and maybe it'll help us, give us a little more direction on what we want to do as far as zoning and so forth is concerned then too.
would that conversation include any school boards?
Certainly, we could do that too.
We have many of them in town, so.
Yeah, so I'll reach out to everybody, and I'll ask everybody to come in like in 2 weeks,
2%.
and we'll do it at our next committee meeting then too. This way we can keep the conversation flowing. But again, I wanted to just kind of put this on the table as a quick overview, because we can, a lot of this paperwork, it is pretty much repetitious in almost all communities. The state's outlined this. I've said to Deputy Chief Schultz and Chief Miller in the past that many of the concerns that Chief Miller gave us in our packet, I share those same concerns. I mean, just for all practical application, or scenarios, I should say, we're going to get inundated with calls in our police stations as well as every other town where you're going to have secondhand smoke in buildings and stuff like that. I mean, you're going to have, obviously you've got children around, and I sat in on a major discussion 3-4 weeks ago. It was back in September when I was at the Illinois Municipal League Conference, standing room only, because this is such a hot topic. All of our elected officials were there, and that's what they had a presentation, and that's what they says. There's going to be so much emphasis on law enforcement here. It's crazy. We're asking law enforcement to do, stand on their head kind of thing, where the tools aren't totally there yet for actually like you do for liquor, like where you've got breathalyzers and stuff. They're still working on trying to figure out how do we determine if somebody's under the influence. I really think from a practical scenario, like I started to say, was you're going to have neighbors calling in because you got secondhand smoke rolling in their house, where landlords are going to have to step up to the plate and decide if you're going to allow smoking still in your buildings. But then you got homeowner associations. Those people are going to be impacted. Are you going to allow that in condominium buildings and stuff like that? Because it's the same thing as the apartment buildings. You're going to have situations where people are going to be sitting on their front porch thinking that they're going to be smoking a joint on their front porch. Nope, that's illegal. You cannot smoke in the public eye. You can't even stand on your back porch and smoke in the public eye if I can see you next door and stuff then too. So either you're going to see a ton of 6-foot fences going up all over the place, but you're going to still see, I'm telling you, just because I can't see it, don't mean I can't smell you. There's going to be a lot of issues with this, and I just feel terrible on how we're going to ask more of our public safety to handle this and stuff then too.
Yeah, to your last point too, we're going to have to probably consider village properties as.
We've already got smoking. Yeah,
Already there.
we actually do have, Roger, we do have a couple of buildings that do allow smoking.
That is correct.
But we certainly, this is a great point, because we just talked about some other issues recently with the new leases. I think we're going to have to talk about this, because cigarettes are one thing, this is another. And
It's a non-smoking building.
It's a non-smoking building.
I get it, but we do have a couple of smoking buildings too, right? How many smoking buildings? only because you're not mic'd up. How many buildings ballpark?
13 total out of 30.
So you're thinking 13 buildings would be affected by this, that we do allow smoking. Well, I don't think this is a good practice to allow this. You know, I don't think, Chief, what's the rule on medical marijuana, though?
Can't stop it.
Same thing?
No, you can't stop it.
You can't stop it.
can't stop that. I didn't think so.
It's in course of medical care. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right. So you might get a few people that get the exception, you know, but those would just be the few that get the exception and stuff then, too. But I think we need to, you know what, Trustee McGlowan, I would recommend next committee meeting, because they're going to draw up these leases. They're going to start January 1 over at the Heritage Apartments. I think we should, it'd just be my recommendation, this is a board decision. The board's going to have to vote on it, what they want to do. I don't know that I agree that we should allow smoking cannabis in the Heritage Apartments, but that's just my thoughts on it. You know, I'm telling you, I get enough phone calls now, you know, about this and that and the other thing, you know, but I don't know that we want to do that. Because you know how good, I mean, you got people, Roger, how many people even right now that actually do live in a smoking building and are complaining about the guy next door smoking? I mean, we get them all the time.
If they have a medical card, we can't do anything about it.
Well, medical cards are different, right.
I've gone over and had conversations with people that have medical and asked for you to step outside 15 feet from the building and do it outside.
Sure.
So
30-foot rule.
But they don't have to.
legally, they don't have to.
Gentleman's request, you know. I think we do need to, Trustee McGlowan, I would say we probably need to address this with these new leases, because they're going to be printing these new leases. I think we need to have language in those and stuff then too. But again, this would be a board decision, and what the board wants to do with that.
Well, just some comments that I have, just with conversations that I've had with people in the village and department heads and so forth. I think a lot of the focus is on the revenue side, but also just the social costs as well, in regards to the number of establishments that will allow, or the types of establishments. I believe like there's medical dispensaries that can be allowed, or there's the retail side as well. And just trying to get this all together, I guess for us to make a decision, like you had suggested, Mayor, and Trustee Zielinski, just to get, you know, the school board, the industrial association, just to get everyone's input. We would appreciate that, I think, as a board as
Sure.
well. Because the social costs, you know, I know other municipalities have decided not to move forward in allowing retail sales, and they've cited social costs and ensuring public safety as one of the reasons why.
Well, certainly invite all the taxing bodies, you know, if they'd like to participate in that conversation. And again, you know, I've had conversations, and Chief Miller's not with us this evening, but Trustee Neves, Esparza, you were part of that conversation when you and I met with the chief. And you know, it's just, let's put it this way, whether you bought cannabis in Chicago or if you bought cannabis in Crestwood, it's going to be here regardless. And that's really where the conversation, you know, you're not going to stop it. Just to say you're going to prohibit sales here doesn't mean it's not going to be here. It'll be here tomorrow.
It'll be here.
Yeah. And
For sure.
That's where a tough decision on behalf of this board, and certainly the taxpayer. You're looking out for the interest of the taxpayer here too. You know, do we? It's always our intent is to make informed decisions and do what we can to not raise taxes and find the tools that we need to support the taxpayer. And that's why the state of Illinois came up with this whole concept to begin with, is that not just for their behalf, but they're trying to help us at the same time. Unfortunately, you know, we've got a 5-pound bag we're trying to put 10 ounces of stuff into. You know, there's going to be a lot there. And I just think really this is going to be, this is not an easy decision. For some of the neighborhoods, some of the communities you've seen that opted out, those are some pretty strong communities with large tax bases and stuff then too. You know, I mean, just recently Orland opted out. I believe Frankfurt opted out, Naperville, a few other towns, but, you know, obviously our taxes are less than theirs. You know, we try to live within our means. We have a very blue-collar community, and we have to make a decision on what we think will best serve our taxpayer. Our community, you know, obviously we're concerned with the security, the healthy atmosphere, the lifestyle that we want to have established here in our community. We don't want to just throw it up in the air because we see money. But at the other side, you know, what does the majority of taxpayers think? That kind of thing. So we'll get input from all the taxing bodies, and certainly, like I said, I'll reach out to the Industrial Association and all them as well then too, that aren't taxing bodies, but I'll invite everybody to the table. And we'll have a great discussion. We'll probably have to leave, like anything else, it's still business as usual around here, but I'll definitely leave a hole in the agenda to make that happen in 2 weeks, okay?
Should it be a separate meeting? A separate committee meeting before?
We'll look and see if it's, yeah, maybe we even reestablish like a 6:30 meeting in case it goes. I'm still going to ask everyone that comes up, I'd still like them to respect our 3 or 4 minute window per se, you know, but, because you could have a lot of people showing up to something like this. They actually had, they just published something in the news, I think it was the paper I was reading today. They had discussion in Naperville. Meeting ended at 2:30 in the morning, okay? So I understand, and then all, you know, it was, they didn't, and it was actually a close vote too. And I think it was just, I don't think it was an overwhelming vote. I don't have it in front of me, but it was a very, like a 5 to 6 vote, something like that. But we'll take a look at that. And again, we'll try to establish a nice window for maybe 5 minutes for everybody to talk or something like that, you know, but we'll get to the point, because you might have a lot of people that want to have discussion there. And at some point, you don't want to talk in circles. You want everybody to have a participation and stuff like this, but let's be considerate of everyone's time, too, at the same time. That's all. So, anybody else, any questions on us right now? Okay. And when we get done with this meeting, ladies and gentlemen, we got some other issues. We have to go back in a closed session. After this, we have additional discussions, but I've got at least a half dozen copies here. If anybody wants one, I'll give those out and stuff then, too. Moving on then, the IT, Trustee Dalzell?
No report, Mayor.
All right. Planning and zoning and licenses, Trustee Juarez.
I have a presentation of a list of licenses dated December 30th through October 11th, 2019. And I have a discussion on upcoming Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing to take place on Wednesday, October 16th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. for case number 2019-10-V-200 for a sign variance for the property located at 6201 West 115th Street in Alsip, Illinois. What's on there?
All right, thanks. Trustees, any presentations, petitions, or communications? None? Any unfinished business? Any new business?
Yes, Mayor. I got a written statement I'd like to read into the record.
Sure.
Mayor, clerk, and fellow trustees, on behalf of myself and Trustee Monica Juarez, we are invoking our right and privilege to legal counsel, legislative counsel, in accordance with Chapter 2, Article 17, Section 2-302 of the Alsip Municipal Code. In light of the recent questioning by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the onslaught of media questions investigating investigative articles of Freedom of Information Act requests regarding the Safe Speed cameras, it is in our legal right and best interest to refer all questions of us to legislative counsel. Unfortunately, we do not feel that the current village council has our best interests. This was evident at the September 3rd board meeting when Trustee Juarez was gavelled in an unprecedented motion by the mayor while exercising legislative checks. Attorney Joe Kenkar did not offer proper parliamentary advice to the mayor during this move. Sometimes questions are hard and sometimes they feel personal. They don't need to be answered or even acknowledged. However, the gaveling violation, the will of the voters, and the voice of the Trustee Juarez. As voted into position by the previous board, the law firm of Ansel Glink is our representative. It is not our intention to run the meter, a term the Mayor Ryan used when we approved this ordinance, but instead to be transparent and answer all requests and questions within our scope of knowledge with proper legal review. Any FOIA requests, investigations, and questions should be forwarded to our attorney, who is now Mr. Robert Bush. Mr. Bush's information is attached. We have a signed copy to give to the clerk. Respectfully, Trustee Zelinski and Trustee Juarez.
Okay.
Thank you for the copy in advance.
All right, thank you. Next, we need to adjourn to closed session, trustees, to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2, Chapter 1. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Who was the quick one on the draw over here?
Mike?
Okay, this is roll call number 2 to adjourn to closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel of the legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C1. Again, this is roll call number 2 to adjourn to closed session. Trustee Dalzell.
Yes.
Trustee Zelinski.
Yes.
Trustee Juarez.
Yes.
Trustee McLaughlin.
Yes.
Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Navas-Esparza.
Yes.
Motion carries to adjourn to closed session.
Thank you very much. We'll adjourn to closed session then at, this is 8:37. And again, thank you for everyone for joining us this evening. If anyone in the audience want a copy of what we looked at tonight, I'd be happy to share it with you. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.